Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Sports Scene here on WLCS TV20, Lorain City Schools Television. I'm Tim Alcorn. As Joe Bach likes to point out, I've been doing this a long time. You see those old classic Sports Scene shows where I look about 50 years younger than I am right now, but I always enjoy coming to the studios here at WLCS TV20. And my guest this week is a guy that I called his games when he was a basketball player at Admiral King High School. I called his games when he was the boys' head basketball coach at Southview High School. And of course, he's been a great friend of mine through all of that and through his tenure as now the athletic director of Lorain City Schools. It's been an amazing career for one Bryan Koury. Bryan, my friend, it is great to see you. I don't know how many of these we've done. There's been a few, but man, it's good to see your face and talk to you again.
As both a basketball coach and an athletic director, at least 3 or 4. But I appreciate sitting down with you. In the words of Mike D'Angelo, the man, the myth, the legend.
I hope you're an easier interview than D'Angelo was. No, I had a lot of fun with Mike. You talk about a fixture as far as Lorain sports is concerned. Mike's pretty close to you as far as all the years that he's been involved with Lorain sports.
He was my manager, equipment manager, obviously, when I was at Southview. But I know he always referred to you as the man, the myth, the legend.
Well, yes, none of that is accurate, but or maybe I'm a man, yes, but the myth and legend I'm not sure about. But boy, you know, I go back to those days when you were running up and down the floor as an Admiral King Admiral. Did you ever envision as a teenager that now all these years later you would be the athletic director of Lorain City Schools? Was that something that was always kind of in the back of your mind, coaching and administration and all that?
Actually, never. I knew at a young age when I was in high school that I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to coach. I was very fortunate. Obviously, I have a son that is just went to college, dropped him off a couple weeks ago. But young people in general don't know necessarily what they want to do career-wise. I was very fortunate. Even I look at the program from when I played basketball, and you have the little bio, and it said I wanted to be a art teacher and a basketball coach.
There you go.
I loved my time as a teacher. Actually, I was at the elementary and then at the high school. I actually even enjoyed the elementary more than the high school. I loved coaching. Never once did I ever think that I would become an athletic director until I had some conversations with administration while I was coaching, and they wanted me to consider doing this, and I got roped in, and I've been here now for, I don't know, 16, 17 years. But I think this is 17. This is year 17. 17
as the athletic director?
Yes.
Holy smokes, I never ever would have guessed that.
Yeah.
Maybe the gray in your beard.
Trust me. Once you become an athletic director, you get gray and you lose your hair. It's just the way it works.
That's why I never became an AD. But I do want to ask you, because as a basketball player, of course, you know, the Mitch Gillums, the John Rossitanos as a coach, you kind of take from those guys, I'm sure, and other coaches and people that you knew in coaching and so forth, and you learn from them. When you become an administrator, you know, how does that process work? Whose mind do you pick, or do you basically say, I got to learn this job?
Well, I had a couple of good mentors when I first became an athletic director. One thing, you talk to anybody that's an AD, and they say, when you walk through the door, give it a week, and you'll realize everything that you didn't know and everything that's out there that exists that you didn't know existed. So I had Mark McGuire, okay,
one of the best.
And he was extremely kind. Brought me in at the time he was the AD at Elyria, and he really helped me to understand the job. And one of the things that he told me was, "You're coming in as a basketball coach. During basketball season, wrestling was going on. You didn't even know wrestling existed, okay? Because obviously all your time is being spent with basketball. I had a little bit of a baseball background, but you need to lean on your coaches. They're the professionals. They're the experts. And my coaches over the years taught me a lot about the individual sports that they coach, what the sport entails. I still lean on my coaches after 17 years because no matter what, there's a world out there that you don't know about because you don't do it every day. It's no different than a building principal. So for a building principal to think that they can go into every single classroom here and say that they understand the subject matter and what's being taught, that's not true. That's not the case. The same thing holds true with being an AD. But I will say, as a principal, you walk through and you can see who knows how to teach. The same way as an AD, you can see who knows how to coach. Now you need to try to provide those individuals with the resources they need to be successful. I don't like looking over coaches' shoulders. I like to be the person that they want to come to tell me, here's what I need to help kids. Here's what would allow the program to grow. If we're able to do this, if we're able to do that, and then I want to do my best to try to provide them with what they need to be successful.
It's interesting you say that. A story that I always remember about a coach is Ken Fennick over at Elyria High and the amazing softball program that he had, state championships and so forth. And some people don't understand that he was a football coach. He knew nothing about softball, zero. But he was approached about being the softball coach. And he's like, I don't know anything about this sport. I've never even played beer league softball. But they were like, but you can coach. We see that in you. You'll learn softball, when to bunt, when to steal, when to do this. But you can coach kids. And that's what we're looking for. So
Dan Turnus.
Yes.
He was the wrestling coach, and not to say that Dan didn't have somewhat of a background in baseball, but he was an expert when it came to wrestling. But they saw how he related to kids, and they knew he could coach, and they talked him into being the baseball coach.
Coaches can coach. It's how you relate to kids. So you mentioned
John Rossitano with softball.
Well, I still think Lacey does all the work. But that's another show for another day. But you're right. Learn the sport. You'll learn the sport. You'll learn the X's and O's. But the ability to relate to kids, the ability to teach. And I'm sure that's an aspect that you look for when you're interviewing coaches or when you're talking to somebody about their job. I'm sure there's a little X and O's that goes into it. But in the end, what you're looking for is somebody that can teach, be a mentor, be relatable to these young student athletes.
110%. I get turned off in an interview when they start talking about X's and O's, okay? A good friend of mine said years ago, if my X's are bigger than your O's, I don't care what you draw, okay? So if you have, again, it's high school athletics. If you have somebody that's good for kids, okay, that's number one, first and foremost. I started to look at things a little bit differently as my son started to get involved in sports at a very young age. And the number one most important thing that I look for now is somebody that I know will create a good, positive experience for the kids where 10, 15 years after they graduate, they'll look back and say, you know what, I really enjoyed my time being a part of that team.
There you go.
And again, that's number one. Winning, okay, takes care of itself. If you have the talent and you have somebody that's good with kids, then the team will have the opportunity to win. But number one, if that person is not great for kids, a winning season can be a miserable experience. The same way that a losing season can be a really positive, enjoyable experience.
That's a great point. So, Bryan, let's get to the present and talk about the 2022-23 school year. That sounds bizarre to me in my head when I go, wow, that seems like way in the future. But it's this year, 17th year. But is this the year that high school athletics and really school in general has a return to normalcy, or is there now a new normalcy?
Are you trying to jinx us?
No, but I mean, I know you've been through some incredible challenges the past couple of years.
You hope so. Obviously, we dealt with COVID, okay? Every school district in the state of Ohio dealt with different challenges, okay? To sit here and say that everybody's situation was the same, that's not the case. But everybody dealt with challenges, many of which in different ways. During the time that we were trying to navigate through the pandemic and everything that was happening, we would have, whether it be Zoom meetings, okay, phone conversations, all of us ADs, talking about brainstorming all the different things that we were going to do, how we were going to do it. And everybody was trying to accomplish the same thing, but there was no blueprint. There was no map. Everything was new.
Right.
So what everybody was doing and how they were doing it was a little bit different. And the OHSAA, in their defense, they were allowing school districts to try to navigate through it because they themselves didn't know. And they didn't want to say this is the right thing to do when, in fact, a school district may want to do something a little bit different. So they gave us some very general protocols that we had to put in place, but we had to figure out how to implement them. And we had to figure out how we were going to make sure that our coaches, players, and fans were going to adhere to them. So obviously it was beyond challenging. Beyond challenging.
Beyond.
That was probably the most stressful time of my life, trying to make sure that, again, the positive experience was being had by everybody involved, but also, too, making sure that we were following and doing what we were supposed to be doing and how we were supposed to be doing it. And that leads us now with what you were saying about to where we're at right now. We dealt with the residual effects of COVID, whether it be in school, sport, and again, every school district in the state of Ohio dealt with it. Everybody a little bit different way. I'm starting to see for this year, the first couple of weeks when it comes to athletics, it does seem as normal as it could be, thinking back even to pre-COVID. Whereas last year, even though we were back to playing games with fans in the stands, so on and so forth, it just, again, the residual effects, the kids having spent so much time away from the sport and just everything, them also tiptoeing because of the uncertainty of where we were at when it comes to the pandemic. Are we done? You hear the reports. Oh, well, there's cases are back up, and so last year it was challenging, not as challenging as the year prior. I think for the first time since the pandemic, again, the kids feel normal. Everything is back to the way that we hope it should be.
And as I said, I want to talk about the present and the future more than the past. But I will ask you one more question about the whole pandemic and all of that. And maybe you don't have the answer as we sit here today. Maybe it'll be 5-10 years from now, or your retirement party, whatever. But looking back, at least at this point, what was the biggest challenge that it presented?
The biggest challenge for me as the athletic director was we had a testing program. Our kids were tested weekly. In being tested weekly, we would receive the results. If a kid tested positive, we had to go through a process, whether it be contact tracing, so on and so forth. What we were doing was unique in that I don't know that anybody else in the state of Ohio was doing it. But we were going above and beyond trying to create the safest environment possible for our kids, coaches, everybody involved. And that was very challenging. You had to make sure every single kid tested.
Wow.
The days in which they did test varied from sport to sport. So you'd have certain sports that would test on Monday, Tuesday, so on and so forth. And this didn't just include the teams that were in season, those that were doing anything type of training off season, if they wanted to participate. So now we would get that, the results would come back. Once the results would come back, we'd give them to those individual coaches. Anybody that didn't test, now they're out of protocol. They can't come back until they retest the following week and we get the results back. So the moving parts with all of that, and there were challenges too when it comes to the labs, because at times the labs would get backed up. We would test kids, then we'd have to wait for the results. You'd hope it was 2 days, sometimes it was longer. So a kid that got out of protocol to get back in, it may take even longer because of when those results came back. So it was definitely a positive in we were keeping kids safe on a level that everybody else wasn't. And we did learn that there were kids that tested positive and had COVID that you never would have known. They had no symptoms.
That happened to me.
They had no symptoms. And had we not caught it as quickly as we did, it could have spread to the point where, but we were also protecting families.
Absolutely.
So by being a part of the sport, One thing that we learned also is it wasn't being spread throughout the sport. We would have, say, for example, a team where one, maybe two kids would test positive. Nobody else on the team would test positive. Okay? Well, that showed that the protocols that we had in place were working. Okay? Yep. But we also learned that where the spread would happen is when the kids would gather outside of the sport. So we would have 3, 4, 5 kids from different sports that would test positive. We learned that those were kids that were together a lot outside of the sport. So having those conversations with the kids, explaining to them the importance of them to a certain extent isolating if they wanted to play the sport to avoid that spread, it really helped because the kids that really wanted to play, they took it to heart.
Yep. It's amazing how receptive they were, that is.
Yeah.
All right, I promise. Here we go. Present and future.
Yes.
So, 17th year as AD, but I'm sure there's always some excitement when the new school year starts. So as you and I tape this show, this 22-23 school year just getting started, it was great to see Lorain High football open up with a victory. So again, as we tape this show, I'm not sure when folks are watching it, but so they're 1-0. But just talk about this school year as far as athletics and what you're excited about program-wise and so forth.
Yeah, definitely really excited for the kids. Anytime they win a game, you're always happy for them. I started this back when my son was younger, winning games and so on and so forth. I'm not proud of you. I'm happy for you.
Right.
I'm proud of the way you handle yourself. I'm proud about how hard you work. I'm not proud of when you win. Okay.
Right.
But the same thing with our kids. I tell all of our players all the time, yeah, I'm really happy for you. I tell the coach, I'm really happy for you. Okay. But more importantly, I'm really proud of the way that our kids, and this is across the board, all the sports, fall sports, the way they've come in, worked hard, accepted coaching. You can tell that they are so excited about the normalcy that they're seeing. Past years, last couple years have been a lot of challenges for obvious reasons we already discussed. But that made it really difficult for coaches to coach. And really difficult to get kids to buy in. We're back to normal in that respect. So I'm really proud of the kids and how they've approached from the first day, August 1, coming to practice every day on time, getting there early, being prepared, really working hard in practice. And for them to turn around and end up having a victory as a result, you're happy for them.
Happy for them, yeah. Absolutely. And I do want to have you talk about your coaches because as you talked about the challenges that you faced as an administrator and as an athletic director, but take a moment or two or longer if you want, but just talk about your coaches and what they have done to persevere to get to this new school year. I'm sure they deserve a huge pat on the back.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And what they bought into and worked towards with our kids over the last couple years, they obviously need to be commended. A lot of the sports last year, especially the fall sports, they had a lot of struggles. The kids had a long time off away from the sport. So going into last year, a lot of the coaches had to approach it in such a way to where we're starting from scratch. And we're going to coach you in such a way to where we're going to prepare you for the future as much as to try to prepare you for the present. That's challenging, especially at the varsity level, because normally you prepare not for the future, you prepare for the next game, okay? Not the following year.
Right.
So they had to do a little bit of both. They had to take care of their seniors, which it was their last year, to make sure that they're preparing the team in such a way to where those seniors have the most positive experiences possible with their careers ending. But then also, too, trying to get the younger kids ready for what would be the future, the following year, and potentially even beyond.
That's amazing. I hear that the soccer program per se is actually growing beyond just the varsity level, that you're going to expand soccer here in Lorain City Schools.
Yeah, we actually, for the first time, we have implemented not only a middle school soccer team, but also middle school cross country.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, and we held off doing so for a number of years because we were trying to gauge interest. We now believe that the interest is there. On top of that, we had to figure out exactly how we wanted to make this work. There were a lot of different things that needed to be put in place. We had to have a place to practice. We had to determine how we were going to transport kids for the purpose of practice, and then obviously make sure that we have a schedule to be able to play games.
Play somebody.
Luckily, our league does have co-ed soccer. So it is male and female together. Now, technically, it's boys soccer with the understanding that girls can play. But what we as a league have done is we call it co-ed soccer, and we just try to encourage as many, both male and female, to participate with the understanding that we're going to do our best to try to split up anybody that's on the field at a given time as evenly as possible between male and female.
Okay.
That's the goal.
That's
obviously,
a unique vision. I like that.
Obviously, you have some situations where you may just have a roster that has that many more male or that many more female, and you just deal with it accordingly. But the goal is to try to make sure that you have just as many boys as girls out there at a given time, and the goal is get kids excited about soccer, teach them the game, prepare them for high school, and then hopefully they want to continue when they get to high school.
Are there other sports down the line, Bryan, that at some point, whether it's not going to be this year, I'm sure that's already laid in, baked in, but are there other sports you'd like to see expand?
At this stage, those were the two big ones.
Okay.
Okay, and we don't have middle school softball and baseball, but at the same time, we have middle school softball and baseball that take place in the summer, okay, with our city. It's not out of the realm of possibility that we wouldn't explore the idea of softball. One of the problems that a lot of school districts get into when they've tried, because we did try doing it at one point in time, this was years ago. The problem is, though a lot of the leagues for baseball and softball start during the spring. You can't participate. The OHSAA does not allow you to participate in the same sport, okay, outside of your school team. So, for example, if I'm playing baseball in the spring, if I want to go play AAU basketball, I can do that. I can't, however, go play for my travel team at the same time, travel baseball team. So what ends up happening is if you have too many kids that want to play with their travel teams or their summer teams, those kids can't participate in, more often than not, you need those kids to be able to have a team, to have a program.
That's awesome. Got about 5 minutes left, and not only are you the athletic director of Lorain City Schools, but I know you're immersed in other things as well within the community. And since we're on WLCS TV20 in Lorain, take a couple of moments and talk about the Lorain Sports Hall of Fame. You and I have been at many banquets together, and obviously it's such a special institution, and I just wanted you to give a quick plug for the Lorain Sports Hall of Fame and what it means to this city to recognize the athletes, the great athletes, the legendary athletes that have come out of the city of Lorain.
Absolutely, and we're extremely fortunate at Lorain High in that we have the actual museum located here right off of our cafeteria. So a lot of our games, we'll open up that museum so fans, when they come to the game during halftime, before the game, if they want to go walk through the museum, they have the ability to do so. There are hours that the museum is open throughout the course of the week for people to come and go through the museum. Yeah, we are fortunate. It is unique in that we have a citywide Lorain Sports Hall of Fame that is a part of multiple high schools.
Yes.
Where most communities, they have their Hall of Fame that's just a part of their individual school. So that is obviously something that is unique to Lorain and is very, very special. One thing that I do want to talk about, though, I'm glad you brought it up, is I highly encourage and recommend people throughout the community and beyond. If you know of anyone that's deserving to be in the Hall of Fame that is not currently in the Hall of Fame, please take the time to nominate them. If you go to the website, Lorain Sports Hall of Fame, and you can go through the website, you can see everybody that's been inducted. Okay, and there's also information there that explains exactly how you can nominate somebody. I've had a number of people over the years come to me and say, so-and-so should be in the Hall of Fame. And it's usually like this. No, they're supposed to be in. And I get chewed out, cussed out because I'm on the committee, and I don't decide who's in the Hall of Fame. But I tell them, you got to nominate them. Okay,
you go.
and there, I am more than willing to assist anybody. You know, one of the challenges that I have is since I've been the athletic director, I have copious records of everything that's happened over. But a lot of the records, things that happened in the 1950s, the 1960s, and even the 1970s, I don't have access to that. It doesn't really exist. Okay. So those people that have that documentation, that have that information, because they kept scrapbooks and they documented so on. You know, obviously Mr. Popio is an unbelievable resource, but he's one person, doesn't have the information necessarily on everybody that maybe is deserving. Compile that information. I can help to put it together with the whole application process. I've done it for some people. Maybe they're not real handy with a computer. Maybe they just need me to be able to format it for them, by all means. But I do recommend, if you know somebody out there that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, please take the time to nominate them.
And again, Admiral King, Southview, Lorain High, Clearview, Lorain Catholic,
St. Mary's. Yeah.
Right, all those different schools. It's funny you mentioned that about, you know, getting cussed out, because I've had the real honor and privilege of emceeing that banquet the past few years, and there's been a couple of times I've looked at that program going, how was this person not in the last 5-10 years? And then I'll hear, well, they hadn't been nominated. So you've got to nominate people. You've got to do it. My friend, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Love
absolutely.
it. Love it. Good to see you again.
You too.
And again, welcome back for year number 17. Hard to believe. SAD. Again, our guest this week on Sports Scene has been Bryan Koury, the incredible athletic director here in Lorain City Schools. He does a remarkable job. So again, thanks to Bryan for stopping by and paying us a visit. Of course, thanks to Joe Bach here at WLCS TV20 for making everything see and look so smooth. And of course, the biggest thanks goes to you, the viewers. Hope you enjoyed it. And until we talk again right here from the Keebler Studios of WLCS TV20, so long, everybody.